Hi there, it's Paulie here. So, Bushidan, just a little vlog here on how the game runs. So, as I explained in the previous vlog about the development of this, the idea was to bring in some flavor of actual kind of Japanese thinking from the time and military theory from the time, what they thought was happening. Right, so the brief overview. So Bushidan is designed to simulate small unit actions. So these are actions between a few hundred people, not skirmishes between one or two, and not mighty clashes between titanic armies of, tens and tens and tens of thousands. It's that middle ground where, most of the actual military action takes place. So it is an element-based system. So a stand of troops will have multiple figures on the base. That stand represents around about sort of 20 men. So there'll be probably 4 infantry figures or 3 cavalry figures. Probably, I think the base sizes are kind of based on the generic standard you'll find for most games. So you can play this with anything, and those numbers and basing things are all suggestions. As long as both sides are using the same general thing, all as well. But with that kind of level of numbers per base, each individual figure, if you're interested, represents 5 or 6 guys. So that base, about 20 guys. These are formed into units. Units ideally should be more than 1 base, can be up to about 8 bases. So we are looking at units of, up to about 160 people. Maybe if you've got like a heavier base, maybe 200 people, which is a fair size for companies. And when you look at the feudal list, this is what like a small family group is supposed to be able to raise. Okay, so those units, they are generally made up of all the same type and equipment and training of troops. You can mess with that. So for instance, if you had archer units and you're planning on forming them up too deep, but you can fire too deep, but you want to provide like pavises to give them cover, you might only want to purchase pavises for the front rank. The rear rank are never going to use them. No point paying extra points for them. And some people have tried doing combined archer and lancer units, and there's been some things, or having lancer units that are designed to fight too deep, and I'm going to give the front guys heavy armor and the rear ranks nothing, and there've been people messing around with these, and they all work in their way, and they're all vulnerable in their way. So now you also can purchase characters, because at this scale individual characters actually had quite a effect on the battlefield. It's a points-based system, so you're going to use points to purchase your troops. Their training level is paid for, their armor level is paid for, light and heavy. You can also say heavy armor is bulletproof. That's much heavier. Troops in bulletproof armor move more slowly, particularly on foot, but it is resistant against firearms. You also can buy some units up to be elite. You can have like 1 elite unit in an organization. That just allows you to re-roll some dice in combat. And you note down the weapons. Now, melee weapons and bows are basically free. You're not paying for those. So you may choose Yari, which is the long spear. You can choose heavy melee weapons, which is a combination of heavy armor battering kind of weapons. So it could be Tetsubo, it can be, giant two-handed sword, odachi, big old ono axes, it could be naganatas, this sort of thing. These became very popular in the 15th century when there was suddenly a lot of fighting in towns and cities and tight terrain. They're not that great at like holding off cavalry or fighting in close formations, but they are great for like a free-for-all inside villages and so on. So this became very popular. So that's their strength. And bows, of course, they are free. there are also firearms, but firearms you pay extra for. Zutsu is the Japanese term for cylinder, bore. So your basic gun is like a standard small bore, which is sort of arquebus style bore. You may buy the improved version, which is more like a musket. It's got a much heavier caliber and a much longer barrel. Or that same level pays for the Samurai Zutsu, which is a similar thing, which was like very finely crafted, very accurate. Same effect, really. So you can upgrade to the big girl guns if you wish. So you can also purchase characters, as I said. Your CNC comes for free. You can purchase leaders. Leaders can attach themselves to troop units and give them a bonus in battle. They can fight individual duels with other characters, and if a leader is with a unit, it can issue orders to that unit. So having some leaders attached makes you a little bit more flexible. You can also buy characters. These are people renowned for their close combat abilities, and I've put in the rules lots of colourful examples of some of these guys. Sidebar, there was one guy that I loved. He plunged into a battle and was really proud. I think he took like 17 heads, of not foot soldiers, samurai level, top level swordsmen. He killed 17 guys in one battle. Was so thrilled by this that he had the heads preserved. And when he went into battle from this point on, he had a personal bannerman behind him who had a long bamboo pole with all 17 mummified heads hanging off it. That's this guy's personal banner that just some poor guy, he just lugs this around behind him wherever he goes, like, yee! But so, figures that you can all make. But anyway, having heroes attached to a unit in melee gives it a bonus in battle. You can also equip characters with an Zutsu, with the Great Zutsu, which is basically a hand cannon. You'll see a lot of these in Japanese woodcuts and so on. I think we're getting one on the cover. And these things are just these monstrous hand cannon. But characters with these can actually fire during the firing range as kind of like almost a light artillery piece in their own right. But because they're lugging this big old thing around, they don't contribute to melee combat the way other guys do. So the turn sequence is relatively simple. What we're doing is we're kind of dicing off for initiative. Now, what you've done was you've created your army. You've created your ryu, which is your way, the military kind of theory and training under which your Bushidan, your warrior group, is operating. So the Japanese had different magical elements. So they've got wood, fire, metal, earth, and air. And what else I got? Wood, fire, earth, air, water. Yeah. So now each of these kind of corresponds to a virtue. So earth kind of corresponds with steadfast discipline. Fire corresponds with wild ferocity. Water is kind of prudence, the ability to shift and change according to situations, etc. So what you've done is you've designed your ryu by splitting a number of points up amongst these. You also split things up. One of the elements is metal. That is kind of the steadfastness of your troops. So you take a number of counters equal to the number of points you've put in each of these elements, counters corresponding to the elements. That's kind of your order chit pile. Now, when your turn starts, you both sit there and you put order chits down on things, alternate, putting them down. You put them face down, hiding the element of the order. Now, those units that have got a commander can just have a command chit put on it, or they can have an element order put on them. You can also keep some order chits in reserve because they're useful later on. So in order of initiative, you then basically reveal the order chits and move accordingly. Now, each of these elements, if you're using elements, you can either just take a default move. I can stand and fire as a fire order, or I can just do a move as a movement order. Everything else, you've also got a special fire and a special movement order for, depending on the element. And some of these are very colourful. So it's like the Earth discipline has this very is called a wave attack, where you're doing introduction and extroduction with ranks, but they're loading prone and firing from a very low crouch and going back down. So that has an effect. These guys get extra saving dice against missile fire and can move forward and backwards a few base steps, you know, as they fire. Or ferocious attacks. You get a bonus in your attack because the wild abandoned the attack. But if you lose the melee, you will take extra casualties because of that wild abandon. You flung yourself, you know, literally you flung yourself incautiously into battle. So some of these things have different orders and effects for cavalry or infantry. So there's a lot of kind of color as to the actual orders. But when you activate a unit, you then finish that unit's activation. If it's a fire move, you fire. If it's a move, you move. If that move takes you into contact, you then fight that melee right there and right then. After melee and all movement is over, you can then perform rallies on troops and so on. If no one's lost the game, you then take all the chits off and start the next turn. Now, those reserve chits, as units take fire, if you take a certain number of casualties per stand, it will either halt a unit that's moving, or it will just basically stop that from taking a turn. You can use reserve chits to basically reactivate it. So, you know, exalting the troops onwards, yes, you know, ignore that fire, boys, in they go. You can also use those chits for battlefield rallies. The rallies effectively kind of heal the effect of some of the casualties, but you always take a minimum of one casualty, so you will get worn down over time. How firing and melee works, right? So for firing, each base has a set number of dice that it will be rolling, d6. You can fire 2 deep as long as the base behind is firing at the same target as the base in front. Now, you're going to roll dice, and you have a training level. A dice that scores the training level or less is a hit. So, whoosh, rolling a bunch of dice. Now, your opponent gets a saving throw. The saving dice, because I wanted both sides to be engaged, you're not just sitting there and taking it. So, the saving rolls you get, if you've got armor that is effective against the incoming fire, you get some saving dice. If you're in cover, you get some saving dice. If you're in skirmish formation, some of these elemental orders might also give you some saving dice. And you also get saving dice if the opponent firing at you is disordered, or if they've taken heavy casualties per base. You roll the saving dice, the number of hits scored on the saving dice, they're just a straight up roll. You don't roll against training for that. But if the number of saves that are successful are subtracted from the number of hits that are successful, any excess hits goes casualties onto the unit. The first casualty will disorder it. Second casualties actually are marked as, you know, casualty losses on the unit. And, you know, when units take a certain amount, then they route away from contact and have to be rallied if they're going to come back. Now, melee is done sort of the same way. Very simple kind of square up rules. As you hit, just square up the bases. So just so you know who's fighting who. You know, if you've come in at someone at an angle, then you can touch base to base an angle. Then just kind of swivel to meet. Some of these elemental orders will allow groups to do incoming fire against someone that's charging them. The prudence and kind of discipline orders, you know, prudence means you've always got a reserve that's loaded and these sorts of things. So that's how you can use fire to sort of halt in-rushing troops. But once you've touched, both sides are going to roll dice. And you get dice for whether you've got heavier armor than the other person. You've got dice for if you have a weapon superiority in that terrain. You have dice for the special elemental orders. Now, some elements trump other elements. Water trumps fire. Fire trumps wood. If you have an elemental order that trumps the defensive order style, you get a bunch of extra dice. So anticipating what kind of elemental order the other guy's going to put down and having the thing that you know will counter it is a part of the skill. So if you've seen the other guy, or if you know the character of that player and know he's going to take all fire and he's going to take wind, he's going to take fury and speed, fury and speed, fury and speed. Right. What counts as fury and speed? I want some of those up my sleeve because I know he's going to fling himself into those attacks, and that's when I want discipline. The spears, go into tight phalanx and hold him off. Okay, great. So you both roll. Again, anything that scores your training level less as a hit. Whoever rolls the least number of hits, you subtract that from the larger. The person who rolled the least has lost the melee. Casualties will come off the excess points from the attacker. The defender basically immediately retreats back. If they've taken a certain amount of casualties, they will rout off. But you can do battlefield rallies by paying those order chits, etc. Now, at the start of the game, you're given a pile of victory tokens. Hopefully, these are going to look like Japanese gold coins. The gold coins. You'll have a pile of these so that unlike DBM, DBR or whatever, where you just have to trust that the other guy's keeping records, there's actually a pile of things. Now, during play, you get a store of these depending on the size of your force. Basically, each unit you get one, and you get one for the leaders, etc. But you can gain some during combat if you win man-to-man combats of champions and leaders versus champions versus leaders. Tiny bit more on that later. So you can get a point if you win one of those duels. But anytime a unit routs, anytime you lose a melee, you lose one of these coins. When you've run out of your entire stock of coins, that's it. Game over. Your group has decided to retire from the battlefield. So there's an actual physical way of keeping track of winning and losing. The characters can attach themselves to units, or they can be running around by themselves. Characters can go into melee combat with other characters, or if there are characters attached to units that collide, the characters stop and do a duel. All duels are one-on-one. So if one guy comes at you with two characters and you've got one guy, you will fight each one of those guys in turn. Essentially, you're rolling a bunch of dice, getting hits on a certain score. Whoever gets the most hits wins that duel. If it's a campaign game, because there is a little campaign set of rules attached to this, if you win a duel, later on, your guy will be rolling more dice in a duel because you've gotten more experienced. So some of these guys become, mighty swordsman. So great, fantastic. My Toshiro Mifune impersonation there. So the fun part of it is kind of that designing your Ryu and that kind of elemental anticipation, which can really tip the balance in some of the fights. And deciding, are you going for cheapness and mass? Are you going for tons of kind of light armored spearsmen? Are you going for highly trained, heavy armored samurai spearsmen? Element wise, am I going to put lots of speed, lots of wind in there because that means I can get way extra movement on troops that do that? Am I going for those ferocious attacks? Am I going for cunning? Keeping you in play with my clever ploys. So you can design stuff and armies to suit those different tactical systems that you create. So a flexible system, and I hope a bit of an innovative one for everybody. So there is a little campaign system attached to this, which is designed essentially for getting you playing the board games. The map can be abstracted any way you want. You can just take a piece of paper and kind of just draw little circles that are people's realms and just make sure everyone butts up against kind of a similar number of enemies. There is a tracker, which is your relationship with each of your neighbors. So when it is your turn in the campaign, you decide on what you're doing. You can basically sit there and kind of guard your realm, do improvements, and react against things that happen. You can send out raids and try and peck away at people and just kind of annoy them. Raiding was very, 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 very popular. So you're sending out some horsemen, you're sending out some guys to, run down that hill, set fire to that village, steal all the chickens and pluck the strings from their loots and sort of. Or you can sort of send in guys seriously looking for battle, any battles that happen, these are played. You're looking for glory. As you get achievements, you gain glory. And the thing is usually played to a set glory target. Whoever was the first one to 12 glory will win the campaign. As you score wins, you get a little tracker that's moving sort of towards total victory over that neighbor. So you're getting more and more inroads into their territory. There are advantages and penalties and so on for being on a certain track with someone. So as you get deeper into someone's territory, you start gaining some advantages against them. Likewise, as someone's chewing into your territory, you start losing some abilities. You start, fielding less troops because you've lost territory, etc. You can call for allies. Allies can start making glory off attaching themselves to, just come on to these fights and, just sneak a bit of glory out of the whole thing. So yeah, a fun way of getting everyone kind of playing. You can make alliances and so on, and you can basically back up these alliances with glory, like, our two houses, inseparable, jest, nil separandum est. Or as we say in Australia, hands across the sea. You invest points, so that kind of represents your marrying daughters and these sorts of things, so that if you break that alliance, it does cost you glory. You've broken the alliance, so you've gotten whatever advantage you thought that was, but because you're now, low down scumsuckers for breaking your thing, you do suffer a bit of reputational damage to your glory, but maybe you'll get it back by nicking their stuff. You can also kind of declare yourself to be a vassal to someone, which has actually turned out to be strangely useful, where when they go into battle, the vassal basically always offers to ally, but your liege lord has to, it should be kind of defending you, because if someone takes you over, then he loses that vassal, and so he loses the glory for having a vassal. Oh, so you kind of got to look after your vassals. But meanwhile, the vassals are turning up and, yay, I had a victory. I won 3 glory points. Yes, but I turned up as an ally, so I'm taking one of those because, part of the glory is due to me. So, wait, I've got a leech on my neck. But so we have had a couple of these campaigns just done where, the vassal's just so much better than the guy running him because he's just parasitized off him for so long. I am your friend, carry me. Go, piss off, go away. So yeah, just a fun little thing. Now, the other thing the rules do is this is a period where Japanese troops are fighting in foreign climes. So the whole Japanese invasions, plural, of Korea took place during this period. So this is your opportunity to bring out those Joseon Korean figures. So there's appendices that have rules in there for Korean Bushidan, what they're like, their equipment, their training, their tactics. The Japanese also fought as mercenaries in Siam. The most famous of them actually really just kind of fought as officers of Siamese troops, but there were Japanese, entire Japanese units turning up and fighting. So yes, we'll let you do that. Japanese Waku, the pirates, were conducting many raids on Ming China and all up and down the coast. So there's rules for Ming Chinese. Also, Ming Chinese armies came in on the Korean invasion, helping the Koreans throw back the Japanese. So you can be fighting Ming armies as part of that. And the technology there's kind of interesting. They've got like way more primitive firearms and so on. The Japanese firearm technology is so much higher. And as I explained, it's their own technology. It's not copied off the Europeans. It's like they've taken that as a jumping point and gone their own way entirely. Japanese also, wackily enough, fought the Spanish. Japanese pirates were operating in the Philippines, and they ended up attacking the Spanish garrison and so on. So you can leap in there, and also the Ryukyu Islands, Okinawa, and so on. This was a considerable non-Japanese island kingdom, hundreds of islands, considerable trade kingdom all its own. The Japanese at the end of this period invaded them and took them. When you hear things about Okinawa as Japanese home soil, no, it ain't. It was conquered in the 1620s. Hell, I guess. I'm Australian, so it's the country I sat in. But what the hell? But they're in there, and they're an interesting mix because, they use a lot of kind of Chinese technology and a lot of kind of trade technology. There's some wacky things from this period, by the way. Things like, as I was researching, I didn't realize that areas of Luzon in the Philippines was a major chainmail exporter for the entire Southeast Asian region. It's exporting chainmail to India, and all these sorts of things. These are not unsophisticated cultures, and Javanese firearms industry was quite advanced. Java muskets. They've taken their inspiration from Western ones, and they've made these rather beautiful muskets all of their own, and so on. So yeah. So if you want to play non-Japanese forces, great. They're all in there to play. So that's the general rundown. Now, these are designed to be played with any figure scale. So obviously, there's lots of beautiful 28s out there at the moment. The Perrys have gorgeous 28mm samurai ranges, and of course they do Joseon and so on. Steel Fist Miniatures has some absolutely unspeakably vile and utterly accurate samurai miniatures, which have they do all the grotesque armors from the period. So they've got guys with conch shell helmets, or guys with armor designed to look like bark, or those wonderful armors designed to look like you're a pot-bellied old man or an emaciated monk. They've made all of these, so great for doing those characters and things if you want them to really stand out on the battlefield. But you can also play this with your 15s, which is great for those of us like me who have 15mm samurai armies standing around. Also plays with 6mm, cheap, has a great cineramic look, and Bacchus has a lovely range of those. Again, quite easy to get a force together for that, and not cost you too much money. And I always find 6mm great fun to make terrain for, because you can really kind of make tiles and mold things. So yeah, up to you what scales you play it in, and movement is all done in essentially base depths. So whatever scale you're using, the movement system just adapts itself instantly. So this has been made from many years of experience of playing these things and being irritated by niggly games. Hopefully it's a pretty clear and easy game to play, but has that period feel and has that kind of interesting Japanese edge to it, with the ryu, the elements, and the kind of trumping each other's tactical style. So do take a look at the rules. Hope you enjoy them, and I'll hopefully see you guys at the game table sometime. Cheers, everybody.